having being an athlete, I have represented India in athletics, and then I also represented India in shooting. I played world championship, and having been into sports for a very long time, and then as a sports administrator, uh, I would just share my experience over the years that I have seen, because I feel that sports management is a very dynamic and complex system. Unlike other fields where you maybe you construct a building and that's it, but then here the building is constructed for an athlete. The focus is totally for the athlete, and athlete is also, I feel, is just not an athlete. It is much beyond an athlete, because it's the human body which is at work, and the human body is not working at a minimal or at an average level. It is actually working to break barriers that its own body has set, and it is also trying to break records which the others have set. So it's a very, very complex system. A little bit change in the rule of any game changes the whole scenario, from the playing infrastructure, from to kit, to the training technique, everything, the total approach changes. So I feel overall, we all need to work in tandem when we are working in a sports management system, and with the focus on the athlete, be it construction work. If you are constructing, I have seen hostel buildings being constructed, but there may be proper ventilation and all, but I have seen that the simple thing that there should be proper light coming to the room is at times left unnoticed, or a simple thing of where the athlete is going to put the shoes, because the athlete has large number of shoes. The warm up shoes are on one side and the playing shoes on the other side. So where the athlete keeps the shoes also plays a very, very important role, but these things are actually just left out. And whether the room is lively or not, and if the athlete is a student, whether there are proper facilities that have been created for the athlete to study. So there are these things, all these things play a very important role as far as constructing a hostel building is concerned, where it is just not constructing a room. And then if we come to the playing infrastructure, we need to also see whether the playing infrastructure is being maintained properly or not. We often lay synthetic surfaces, but we don't go into the details of maintaining it. From the sports management point of view, it's very important, because you need to prolong the life of the synthetic surfaces, and laying of synthetic surface is a very, very expensive affair. So we need to ensure that, especially as far as hockey field is concerned, whether the shoes are washed before the athletes enter the track, the arena, and even the synthetic surfaces as far as athletic track is concerned, whether it is watered from time to time or all. And we have to also keep it to view that in India the climate changes. So with the change in the climate, the synthetic surfaces do get affected. So it's the proper maintenance, whether there are proper lights, whether there is proper change room, and it is the hygiene is being maintained. All these factors have to be taken into consideration, because it all has an impact on the performance of the athlete. And I'm sure that any management which goes into developing such infrastructure does want its athlete to excel. And then when we come to the gym, I have also seen gyms where we have huge number of equipment, but if you have targeted certain disciplines, that you must ensure that there are general equipment available and there are sports specific equipment available. There is no point in having huge number of equipment which is not being used by the athlete. So we have to ensure, if you are having wrestling as the game being implemented in your system, or if you have badminton, then you must have the general equipment as well as there are equipments available to develop the technique of the player. So those equipments also need to be kept. And I also strongly believe that the whole scene and the whole environment should be a very lively one. I remember a long time back, I went to Jamshedpur for the nationals and I was having fever. And when I saw the track, those days we used to have cinder track. And when I saw the track, it was so beautifully laid and it didn't give the feel, it gave the feel of a carpet. And then, despite having fever, I wanted to run on it. So I feel that whatever the facility is there should be so lively that the athlete always wants to train. Please remember that what happens is, over a period of time, monotony sets in. Every day doing the same workout, same things, it sets monotony. So we need to motivate, or we need to bring very positive vibes inside the whole arena where the athlete is training. And then when we come to having coaches, I feel it is important that the coach is knowledgeable, as well as the coach should have very good communication skills. The body language should be a very good one. Very often it does happen that we have coaches, they are knowledgeable, but the athlete is not friendly enough or is not free enough to express. It's very important that the athlete and the coach has a very strong bonding, a very close relationship, and they should understand each other. Another important aspect, why now, of course, in my time when I was doing athletics, we didn't have much scientific setup, but now there is the scientific way of training has come into place, and every person plays a very important role, be it an anthropometrist or a psychologist, a physiologist, a biomechanic person, physiotherapist, doctor, everybody, because over a period of time, I have seen during the changes in the schedule that the athlete follows, whether it is the off-season workout or pre-competition, post-competition, there can be multiple periodization. So with that, there are a lot of chemical changes taking place in the body. There are chemical losses taking place in the body, especially with the change in the workouts. And so we need to all the scientists, everybody, they need to work in tandem. They need to work together, because when an athlete complains of a stomach disorder, it may not be just a stomach disorder, but there can be a psychological problem actually taking place. So all the scientists, they need to work together. They can't work in isolation and just say, okay, the athlete is having stomach disorder, give the medicine and the athlete will be okay. But it's not so. We have to see what actually is the root cause of an issue. Similarly, it can be an injury also, whether the injury has taken place because of the wrong movement, or the muscles are not proportionally developed. So finally, if there is an injury, then there is, it's just not the role of the physiotherapist, but the role of the other persons also come into place, because we need to know whether it was a wrong movement, or whether there were some chemical losses, hormonal changes for which such things have taken place. So we all need to work together. And above all comes the administrator, which again should be a wonderful person with a human touch, because the athlete, the coach, they all go through so many tensions and frustrations and victories and losses. So at the helm of affairs, there should be a strong person who ensures that all of them are moving on together. We may do mistakes, we may lose, but then with every mistake that we do have we learned out of it or not? And so there comes the leader who ensures that yes, we will find out mistakes and we will try to improve, and then we can move on together. So I feel that sports management is not like any other management. We all have to work together to see that we achieve the optimum. Of course, this is what I'm talking in a different scenario. But if there is sports management, when we talk of implementing something in rural areas and all, then of course all these things remain the same. But one thing that we need to pay attention is the social condition of that place, the economic condition of that place, and the cultural condition of that place. Very often we see that the girls may not be encouraged. So we have to play a very important role how to encourage the girls come out of such communities where they are not getting that backup. We also need to ensure that whether the privacy of the girls while training is being maintained or not. And these are the social conditions that have to be taken into consideration. And above all, I wish all of you a very best of luck to the organizers, and a very hearty congratulations for Golden Jubilee celebrations. And I'm sure Seshadri Educational Trust will do wonders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the field of sport management, as Ms. Roshana Goval said, it's unique. It's a very unique field. And so when I studied economics at University of California at Berkeley, I decided to go into the field of sports economics because of the unique aspect of the sports industry and the passion that the fans have and the uncertainty that the athletes bring, and them maximizing their potential right in front of our eyes. And so as I've worked in this field for over 25 years, I also have decided that the sport management field needs to be as applied to the industry as possible. My students are interested in working in the industry, and so a lot of the work that I do is taking economic principles, applying them to the sports industry, publishing research on those topics, doing consulting on those topics, and sort of bringing that whole process into focus and even in the classroom. And so today I wanted to talk about these 7 different case studies that I've worked on that take economic principles and apply them to the sports industry. Now I won't go through each one of I'll go through each one of these in just a minute. I'll just let you take a look at this for a minute, but we're going to cover each one of these 7 topics and I'll describe how they relate to the sports industry. Let's look through that. Okay, so in the United States, as you are probably aware, college sports generates around $15 billion. That's with a B, $15 billion a year in revenue for these universities. At some schools like Ohio State University or the University of Texas, they generate over $200 million a year just in the athletic department, just from the athletes who are college students playing their sports. And the athletes in recent years have been pushing the university to allow them to have larger scholarships or earn money for and outside of the university. And so in that process, I've worked on a number of these lawsuits. And so one of them reached a point where the judge decided that the universities ought to be allowed to give the athletes an additional $4,000 roughly per year to help cover the costs of going to school. And once that happened, the athletes from the previous years decided to sue the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, which is an independent nonprofit. It's not part of the government. It's just an independent organization that oversees college sports, because they wanted the $4,000 for the previous years that they had not been able to access. And so I created a model, a probit regression model that looked at, you can see the variables in the middle, these various factors that were used to forecast whether it was likely a university would have paid the athletes this additional amount in the past had it been allowed to. So we were, instead of forecasting into the future, we were backcasting into the past. That model proved to had quite a good fit. And so the NCAA decided to settle that part of the lawsuit for $208 million. And so even some of my students, I remember in class, they had received their checks in the mail. Some of them $5,000, some of them $10,000, those amounts, which was quite impactful on their life. And, they had said to me in class, it would have been nice had the school been allowed to pay them that much in the past. So what's interesting about it is the schools are not forced to pay the athletes the money. They're just, these athletes were just wanting the schools to be allowed to if they wanted to. And so that was an application of essentially probate regression analysis to the finances of the athletic department to create a model for the athletes. In sort of a related case, and you may be aware, in the United States, again, college sports is a big business, as I mentioned. The Nike and Adidas and Under Armour and some of the sports apparel companies, they sponsor the athletic departments at different schools. And they like when their athletic departments do really well. They win championships, they win games. And so some of these companies have been paying the families of the athletes to have their son or daughter go to a particular school to play sports because they want them to win at that school. And so the federal government investigated this, and it was in violation of the NCAA rules. And so they prosecuted a number of people involved. And part of the process in front of the judge was trying to understand, why did Adidas do this? Why would they pay $100,000 to the family of a basketball player so that player would go to a particular school? And part of the reason was quite obvious, but of course we had to prove it to the court, was that the athletes can be very valuable. And so I did an analysis of the top athletes that are recruited each year in men's basketball, because that was the focus of the case. And we were able to show that a five-star athlete, and so there were about 25 of those each year in the United States, who come out of high school and go into college, and they generate an additional 7% or so in revenue for the basketball program, which amounts to around $1 million or more at different schools. So imagine that a high school kid comes out of high school, 18 years old, goes to college, plays basketball. They're very good, of course. They generate for the school an additional $1 million. They don't get that. They essentially get their education, which is wonderful, but that amounts to around $50,000. So they get something like 5%. And that's what the athletes are generally fighting for. And you can see in this analysis, a four-star athlete, there's about 100 of those every year. They're worth about 5%. You can see in the middle and so forth. And so that analysis was helped the judge understand why Nike and Adidas and Under Armour are paying the families to send the kids to particular schools. A very common theme in sports management, the economic side, is competition, right? And we think of competition on the field, right? We think of athletes competing with each other. We also have competition in business. And so these teams will often compete with each other in order to get fans or sponsors or stadiums to play in or media deals so they can broadcast their games. And so the different levels of competition you can see here at the top, the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team and the Los Angeles Angels, right? They're in the same league, same location, they play the same sport, they're at the same level. But other times you've got two teams that are in the same location, the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team, the Los Angeles Kings hockey team, but they play a different sport. Do they compete with each other or not? Or do you have the Chicago Blackhawks at the National Hockey League or the Chicago Wolves down at the American Hockey League, right? One's at a higher level than the other. Do they compete with each other? And so this concept of understanding competition constantly comes up in the United States in my part of the world, sort of in a legal context, right? Somebody is suing someone else. I'm working on a case right now trying to determine whether the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Los Angeles Angels compete with each other. And so, on that note, we had a natural experiment take place in the US. The National Hockey League decided to shut down for one season and not let the players play because they were trying to negotiate with the players for a better system for the, for the league. So in that process, we thought, okay, here's an experiment. We can study competition. If you essentially shut down a league, do the fans then migrate and they watch other sports, right? And so we looked at the National Basketball Association because they play during the same time period as the National Hockey League. We looked at the American Hockey League, the Central Hockey League, all these different leagues down, sort of down the quality list. And you can see that there's an incremental impact. It's not necessarily large, but for instance, the NBA tended to see an increase in attendance by about 3%, and it's statistically significant in this process. When the NHL team shut down, the NBA team saw more fans attending. The American Hockey League, which is sort of the next highest level in hockey, saw more fans attend, about 5.8%. Interestingly, we had a negative effect on the Central Hockey League, which is sort of unexpected, although that's one of the lowest levels of leagues. So we used this study recently when my town here, Oakland, California, we lost our National Football League team. The Oakland Raiders, who you may be familiar with, moved to Las Vegas. And in that process, the city of Oakland was unhappy about that, and so they sued the National Football League, trying to keep the team from moving. And so we were able to sort of talk about the relationship between teams and do they compete with each other, et cetera, in that case. Unfortunately, in the US, I say unfortunately from a fan perspective, the teams are pretty much allowed to move wherever they want. And as long as the league agrees with it. And so it always leaves, a really bad situation when they leave in that town. So Oakland is still unhappy about the Raiders having left. I'm sure many of you know who Tom Brady is, right? Probably perhaps the greatest American football player in history. He's still playing. He just won the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A number of years ago, he sued the National Football League because the amount that he's allowed to earn is capped by a collective bargaining agreement. So the players and the owners get together and they come up with an agreement that usually lasts 5 years or 10 years. And it basically lays out the rules for how much the athletes can be paid. What ends up happening is the star athletes, like Tom Brady, end up getting capped and getting paid a lot less than they would be in more of an open or competitive market, a free market. Now, again, it's hard to feel sorry for a person like that who's making $25 million, $30 million a year. But the reality is he would probably make $100 million a year if there was no salary cap. And so he sued the NFL and said, you have a system, the NFL does, that essentially incentivizes the owners to not go after the athletes and pay them very much. And so that's what we call a revenue sharing system. And so we gathered data across all these different teams, and we wanted to look at the relationship between player salaries, which is on the horizontal axis, you can see at the bottom, and then profits, how much money. So this is operating profits. So it's sort of monthly or annual profits. And you can see that teams make more money. So profits are higher when the teams have lower payrolls, when they pay the players less money. And so they have an incentive to do that because they're saving money. Sure, their revenues might not be as high because they don't play as well, but they're saving a lot of money. And so it incentivizes the owners to essentially pay the players less. And Tom Brady was essentially challenging that. And we have a similar chart with a different measures of expenditures. This is summary expenditures, which is player payroll, but also the coaches and the trainers and things like that. And you can sort of see if an NFL team spends a decent amount of money, like a fair amount of money, it can make some good profits because it wins and then it's able to generate more revenue. Or it can be what's sort of the low cost leader, which is let's spend less money and we'll make more profits because we're saving money. we're getting the revenue sharing from the rest of the league. So in the NFL, about 70%, 70 to 75% of the revenues that a team gets come from other teams and the national TV contract. And so their incentive to spend money to try to earn more revenue is pretty low, because when they do earn more revenue, they have to spend it. And so it's this sort of perverse incentive that we see in the United States in the way that the National Football League is operating. So it's very profitable for the owners, but it's not that great for the players. And so that's why Tom Brady sued. But in the end, he was not able to change the system. And so he went back to his team and kept playing. And then we know what happened after that. He continued to win Super Bowls. So this was ticket, in the United States, a large portion of the revenues that teams make comes from ticketing. And I know that's true also in India. And I know that's true in most countries where you sell tickets to fans, and that generates substantial revenues. There's a company called Ticketmaster in the United States that controls about 75% of the market for selling tickets. And they charge a fee to the team, and they charge a fee to the person buying the ticket. And it's quite a business for them, right? And then one level down, there's a company called StubHub that resells as a platform to allow people to resell a ticket. So if you buy a ticket and you can't use it and you're like, oh, I've got another event, can I sell it to someone? You can go on the StubHub platform, post your ticket, someone else will offer to buy it, and then you've done a transaction, right? And so that's a big business now too, is reselling tickets that have already been sold once. Ticketmaster decided to move downstream into that secondary market and compete with StubHub. And there was a fear that they would take sort of that monopoly power they have in the initial sale, in what we call the primary market, and try to leverage that into a monopoly in the secondary market. Because StubHub is not the only one in the secondary market. There are many companies that allow you to resell tickets. And so a natural experiment took place in the music industry, where Michael Bublé, who's a singer, his tour going around the country was basically also Lady Gaga and Dave Matthews and some other bands were also making those same tours. And in Michael Bublé's instance, the Ticketmaster was restricting certain tickets to where if you wanted to resell them, you had to do it through Ticketmaster. And they were allowing other tickets to be resold in the normal fashion through anyone. And they wanted to run an experiment. So we were able to gather 1,634 tickets and sort of compare the markets for the restricted ticket and the unrestricted ticket. And so the experiment was a little complicated by the way that they did this. So imagine here's the stage, and you've got the restricted seats are sort of those are pretty good seats, right? They're pretty close. And then the unrestricted seats were further away. So it's hard to compare one versus the other because the restricted seats are really good and the unrestricted seats are just okay. And so the natural experiment wasn't comparing those two sets of seats for the same concert. It was comparing those two sets of seats for Michael Bublé as the experiment, and the control group was Lady Gaga and Dave Matthews and a few other bands. In that process, we would think that if Ticketmaster controlled the ticket market, prices would be higher, as we see in monopolies, and we would have fewer tickets being resold. So that was our hypothesis. And so we tested it with this data, and it came out exactly like the economic theory would predict, that many fewer seats were sold for the paperless or restricted tickets. The conventional tickets were sold a lot. And in the control group, you would normally have those really good seats that were restricted. They would normally be resold a bunch of times before the concert actually took place, compared to the less quality tickets, the low quality tickets. So normally, again, you'd expect the good seats to be resold a bunch and the average seats to not be resold much. But we didn't see that with Michael Bublé because of the restrictions on the resale. And when the tickets are restricted and they're sold less often, the prices are much higher. You can see 150% higher than the seats that are right behind them. And in a normal concert, where all the seats are open to be resold, the better seats, sure, they sell for a higher price, but barely a higher price, 25% more. And so we saw exactly what the economic theory would predict, which is that these restricted, or what we call paperless tickets, increased prices by around 30% once you sort of put all the other control variables in. Quality of the seat, which is based on the face value of the ticket, the organization they bought it from, the seating section, all these factors, a decent goodness of fit up top. So we saw a 30% increase. And so that's been the fear. And so StubHub used our study and had us go and present this to a number of different state legislatures in the United States, so they could pass a law that would sort of prevent Ticketmaster from taking over the secondary market. And so again, that's applying economic theory to the industry, to the sports industry, because StubHub also sells sports tickets. And then we turn this into a publication. So at the end, I have a bibliography. I'll let you see. I'll show you. Also, I will send this to so anyone can have a copy if they want to take a look at at these studies. Another example, sort of how to deal with in economics what we call outliers, right? So this happens all the time. You gather a bunch of data and you've got outliers sometimes, and you want to think really hard about what those mean. There was a lawsuit involving the Kentucky Speedway and NASCAR. So NASCAR is one of our racing circuits, right? I'm sure you're familiar with Formula One, of course. NASCAR is one of the racing circuits in the United States. And there was a sort of an antitrust case between a person who built a racetrack for $150 million and then wanted NASCAR to put a race there, and NASCAR didn't want to put a race there. So they sued them. In that process, there was some data analysis done. And that economist included the Daytona 500, which is a famous race in the United States. It's sort of like the Super Bowl of auto racing in the United States, that and the Indy 500, right? And when you include the Daytona 500, you can see that those are clearly outliers from the rest of the data. And so typically when you have outliers like that, you want to control for them separately, maybe through what we call an indicator variable or something like that. If you don't control for them, you can see the slope of the analysis is like that. When you control for them separately, all of a sudden you can see the slope fits the other data much better. And so it changed completely the way that the court saw this case, where they essentially, once Daytona was controlled for as an outlier, all of a sudden the findings in the case changed. So again, these antitrust cases in the United States are very common between some entity and some sports league, challenging the marketing or the monopoly power of the sports leagues. And then finally, college sports, as I brought up at the beginning, very popular in the United States. We did a survey of 2,800, a little over 2,800 football fans at a major university that plays college sports. And a very simple reason. This is very sort of bread and butter business analysis, which is understanding the market segments of the fans. Because certain fans want certain things, another group of fans might want something else. And if you're a team and you can sort of figure that out, and you can say, how do I attract the young fans, and how do I give them what they want, versus maybe an older fan, or maybe a fan who just wants the experience of going out and doesn't care that much about the actual sport. And so we did what's called a factor cluster technique, because we had lots of survey questions. And we created 5 clusters that represent about 95% of the fan base. Almost everyone fits into one of these 5 groups. And so one of the groups was what we called high income critics, were essentially high income folks who are attending these football games and are sort of critical of everything. I mean, it was quite interesting. they complained about the seating and the parking and the food and sort of everything, right? And so, okay, how do we satisfy those high income critics? Because they are likely to donate more money to the school if they can get better seats or a better experience. So sort of targeting them differently than this next group, which were called core football fans, 20% of the fans, and this is American football. These are the people who really are there to watch the football game, watch every play, cheer, hope the team wins. They're less focused on the scoreboard and the halftime show and the food and the music and all that sort of stuff, right? And so, how can the school target those fans in a way to satisfy them? And so we sort of went through that process. We had older experiential seekers, which were 28% of the fan base, so a pretty big group. Health conscious fun seekers, younger, mostly women, or more likely to be women, who were there. They wanted quality food. They wanted comfortable seating. They were not as focused on the sporting event per se, but yet it was a sizable fan base. And then finally, single game middle income critics. So people who don't come to every game, they buy 1 or 2 tickets for a few games. And so again, the university took this information and was able to create 5 different marketing plans to target these customers. And did a good job. As a fan of this team, I attend these games, and I saw, I could see the different marketing come to me over a time period after our study. And so, as I mentioned, 5 of the 7 of the topics that I just discussed, we also turn into academic articles. And so again, that's how I sort of see what I do, which is take economics, apply it in the field, bring that into the classroom and teach the students, what are we doing, what's working, what's not working, how are we helping these organizations, how are we not helping them, et cetera. And then turning those things into publications. And I sort of see that those all self-reinforce the idea of promoting sport management as a field, as an academic endeavor, as a tool to be used by the sports industry to improve sports across all aspects. So thank you very much.
Sports management and physical education. My subject, I have made the presentation in accordance to their academic demands, and hence will be concentrating by and large on the basically on the fundamentals and some of the basic things the professional students in physical education and sports and management need to take into account and keep in mind. So let us go into the topic straight. What the terminology of sports management and team building. So let us go, what is exactly the management? Management is the process of reaching the organizational goals with and through other people and other organizational resources. And it highlights on the goals and objectives, resources and people. So when it comes to sports management as management of those organizations whose major domain of operation is sports or physical activity. And the second terminology here, when management is sports organization. So sports organization is a social entity involved in sports industry. And it is goal directed with a consciously structured activity system and relatively identifiable boundary. The third important factor here and the terminology is manager, the sports manager. Let us understand who is a sports manager. He is a person whose jobs entails planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling to be performed within the context of the organization whose primary or predominant product or service is sports or sports related. Now we have to make it more clear. So we have 3 organizations joined here: Seshadripuram Evening College, Sports Authority of India, and University of San Francisco. These 3 organizations has got its own managerial setup. It has got its own objectives, targets, and so on. So to all those whomsoever is involved with these 3, them in the management and required to perform those through which the objectives, targets, and goals of these organizations can be materialized. So it's a matter. If you take sports management, in nutshell, we can say that the activity is more or less as coordination, and everything we know that in the process of management, from pottery to play in if it from the simple things like making a pottery, and from placing a man on the moon, or maybe now as recently done by China's these are all when basically management task which varies according to the complexity. However complex it is, so there are two fundamental and opposing requirements. Is that is to have the entire task to be divided into various segments, and then it has to be coordinated. So the fundamental thing in management, in sports management or any other management, maybe it may be the satellites, launching of satellites, or how complex or small it is. So it is fundamentally what we have to see is that we have to divide the task into different specified organized segments, and then have a proper coordination between the task accomplished, so that we can obtain the target and we can reach the target. So the structure of an organization can be defined simply as total of the ways in which it is divided into distinct tasks, and then the coordination is achieved through. This can be, if you see the organizational structure of Seshadripuram Evening College, or maybe Sports Authority of India or University of San Francisco, you can find that the structure it is, you can see it, maybe it has got a well-defined structure, and it has got a well-defined hierarchy, and this hierarchy and this structure it is being evolved in such a way so that the coordination becomes more easy, and so that ultimately you can achieve its targets. Next please. So what are the if you take sports management as coordination, let us look into the factors which have to be coordinated. What are the factors to be coordinated? The first one is human resources. Human resources may be whomsoever your professional clients are, or maybe the volunteers. Second is the technologies. If you deal with physical education and sports science, you will have the technologies involved will be exercise science, pedagogy, coaching science, and so on. Next, what is the context? The context defines on the organization, the types, the culture, the norms, and the whatever is the types of organizations that may be government or non-government. Now, what are the support units? Support units comes into events. What are the event you are managing? What is the facility you are managing? And maybe a financial or legal units. Now, we have heard from Professor Dr. Daniel Brescher. It is the management of the financial matter, fiscal management. He has delved into deep into the various factors dealing with the financial management, especially with the explicit example of how it has become a global factor. Even I think if you take into that perspective, we in India are too much down in sports economy. We have yet to consider sports economy, which contributes to almost 5% of the GDP of countries like in America. So it is like each and every support units, maybe depending upon the factor it is, we have to have the process have to be managed within its ambit through evolving through the resources, human resources, technologies, and context, and the support units, and it has to be done through the process of coordination. Next, please. So if you take it in business terminology, what is the coordination means? The coordination here between the products, sports products, is basically done through sports management. And what are the products here? It's products, as I have told in the last slide, it will vary from the organization. Whichever organization which you are dealing, that the organization will be fundamentally concerned about marketing their products. As far as physical education college is concerned, fundamentally we are concerned about managing the various academic courses. We want to see that quality and efficient sports managers, physical educators, sports coaches are produced. So that is the production which we do through management. And how do you see that the marketing is done? Marketing depends upon the acceptability of your product in the open market. So every product which has been in a business terminology depends upon the acceptability. Starting in the morning from your toothpaste to everything, your sportswear, everything you does is basically dependent on the marketing. You see something, you say it's that Colgate is good for you, you use it because you said it is more something which is more appealing and something which is more contributing to you. That is why you accept. So if physical education products, maybe the graduates, BPEds, MPE, and sports managers need to be accepted, we need to have build a marketing system that is more aggressive these days required, because mediocrity has no place in this world. We have to aggressively market to see that this is something which is acceptable and something which is required in the contemporary society, in the community. And that process have to be done through the management process. And we are quite happy that all the three organizations are doing its management perfectly. That is why there is wide acceptability to Seshadripuram Educational Trust, Sports Authority of India, and the internationally acclaimed University of San Francisco. So this is basically because they are very good in managing their products, and that is how we have joined together. So it's a process of management. It is a process of management where you try to sell your product. We can't say that you are selling BPEd students, but ultimately, if you look into a business terminology, it's a reality. You need to say that every college will accept your product. That there should be a demand for your product. The BPEd students, the NPEd students should be accepted. So that is what is required through the management, which is the managerial establishment. Next, please. So if you look into the management process functions, we can see that fundamentally there are the plan there which are involved is planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, and evaluating. So what is this planning? So planning, you know that our great former president of India always, whenever he goes to any place, that is our great visionary scientist, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he always made it to visit educational institutions. And he will go there and he will motivate the students, he will speak to them. And one thing which he always tell the students is that you dream something. Do you dream anything? What is your dream? What do you want to achieve? And he says, he even defines dream, that dream is not something which you see in your sleep. Dream is something which makes you not to sleep. So it is that dream is something crude, but when you make the dream, refine the dream process, it comes to plan. So it is the primary management function is to foresee on something, plan on something. All the innovations in the world have come out of dreams, come out of planning, come out of innovations. So for that, what is required that we should have an inquisitive mind, innovative mind. And the innovative mind, the inquisitiveness comes through planning. And the planning is of the primary management function. And it is the function through which all other things gets into. And it is where you forecast the future. Planning and is something like you forecast for the future. This is something which you are going to do in 10 years ahead of it, 5 years ahead of it. The supreme planning establishment in the country, Niti Aayog, does every planning for the country every 5 years. Every state planning board does planning for the next 5 years. What are they doing? They are doing the planning required in various different fields, in the field of economics, in the field of agriculture, in the field of science, in the field of technology, in the field of information. Everywhere planning is done. So it is the total process subdivided into specific distinctive level attached to various components, and it involves policy setting, strategy formulation, etc. So it has a process. It is a long process which is to be done. So without planning, managers wouldn't know what organize, lead, or control. And in fact, without plans, we wouldn't know anything to lead or control. Next, please. So I have to go a little fast that I will run it through. So planning, I have told that it is to decide on a course of action. It has to be done logically and purposely. It is the plan accomplishment depends upon how effectively do it, and know what is to be done. You should know, and setting all the aims and objectives. It involves budget preparation, appointment of teachers, coaches, and leaders. So it is a complex and continuous process which is to be undertaken by all, by coaches, teachers, administrators, executives, directors. Everyone has to do. And I will tell you, even thieves have to do planning. If even thief and robbers don't plan, they are going to be caught. And the best planning is done by all these people, all the by all sort of visionaries, including if somebody would have seen the Day of the Jackal, it is shown that how a person is planning something. Of course, it's something negative. Like they, even positive and negative, everything requires planning. The wars are planned. The vaccines are planned. Everything depends upon how to do a lot of thinking in advance. And one who fails to plan plans to fail. In every sector, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. It leads to wastage of resources. It has to be modified. You have to see that what is wrong and modified. And it is based on experience and exigencies. You have a crucial element of budgeting here. And then if you undergo all these things and do it in a net in proper coordination, your plans will be succeeded. It leads to success in your planning. Next, please. So there is standardized way of planning, standardization and policy development. It starts with objectives, then leads to policy and implementation, and then it goes on to a ongoing process. It doesn't stop at one stage. Its planning is something which goes on continuous. You see that now how many planning has come. It is 14th plan, 15th plan, 16th plan. It keep on goes on in the country. It marks the progress which are required at different times. Next, please. The next one is organization. I have told that we are 3 organizations here joined, and these 3 organizations, we are all, because our recognition, our identity is based on the organization. Rachna Madam is based on Sports Authority of India head office. I am from LNCP, and Professor Daniel Drescher is from University of San Francisco. So we are all representing the organization. Barring our organization as individual, we are nothing. Whatever we have accomplished are done through these organizations. We have been made to perform these activities through this organization. So how is this organization? The organization is that if something we are planning, the second step we have to do is that to accomplish that task which we are going to perform, we need to create an organization or join an organization. Either if you don't have an organization form for which your plan suits, then you have to formulate an organization of your own. So anyway, it is if you take it in, define it, it is the process of breaking down the total work specified in the planning process into specific jobs, then establishing a formal relationship amongst the jobs, and assigning it to various individuals, and then going ahead with the implementation process. Next, please. So organization is the process or state of being 2 or more people to join their efforts and pool their resources to achieve the given purpose. And it is every responsibility is assigned logically. And breaking down the total work specified in the planning process in the specific jobs, then establishing a formal relationship amongst these jobs so that amongst the individual assigned to carry out them. The third thing is staffing. That once the organization is formed, we need the right people at the right place. Any compromise done in employing the people, in deploying the right people at the right place, will have disastrous consequences. We need to, for this, certain procedures need to be followed. You need to create vacancies, you need to recruitment agencies, appoint the personnels, orient them, train them, develop them, and define hierarchy for them. You can see that the highest the staffing organizations are Union Public Service Commissions in India, the staff selection boards, the National Defense Academy for Defense, and every department has got its own staffing process. And they go through this process so that their organizations are properly being given with the right persons, the right people with the right QR. Next, please. So it requires a lot of extensive organization in service training, and it has to be, some of the things you have to take in mind while staffing is that it should be based on academic and professional qualification, practical experience, practical work, field interaction, and what is crucial here, each and every job requires quality. The quality is something which cannot be compromised. Next, please. And that is and the third factor is the direction. The management function, which is most important here, is to the person who gives directions. And what is a direction? A direction is making distinct and precise decisions, embodying them with instructions that will ensure its completion. And management in action is most clearly identified by the directing function. In the previous times, during the time monarch used to rule, there was a proverb that orders will pierce stones. That is something, once an order is given, it should be complied to. It fetches compliance. So, it should be distinct and precise decisions. Every order falls, it is to be of the government is from the government. Orders are by order of the governor. Every order of the union government is by order of the President of India. So it is something which fetches complaints. Every order of the court is by the competent authority where it will fetch complaints. It has to do that. It see that the complaints is being reported and it is being so. It involves use of authority. A person without authority will not direct, and ability to assert oneself to the prescribed parameters of an individual's environment. It is a guide. It is to guide or the course of action of the organization authoritatively using insight, understanding, sense of judgment, and discretion. So, two, three things you have to take in mind when you direct. You should whenever you direct, first of all, you should have the authority to do that. You should assert yourself and do it. And you should do it within the parameters of the individual environment. And you should do that in such a way, you should do it authoritatively using insight. If you do discreetly without insight, then it can lead to a lot of disastrous consequences. So orders has to be with insight, understanding, and sense of judgment. Right orders should be only passed, and it should be with a proper sort of insight where you see that the public interest is met. Next, please. So where does the direction work best? The direction works best when it has got a well-defined authority, well-defined power, status, responsibility. And then you have to assert yourself to that environment. You have the delegated responsibility and authority. So in order to set things into move in an organization, directions are to be done. Next, please. So in physical education and sports also, you need to require directing at many areas, like in case of infrastructure, where appointing and supervision of personnel, in deciding your budgeting, in organizing competitions, and so on. So in each of these cases, you will have to have use the function of directing. Next, please. And the next one is about controlling. This directing and controlling are twin sisters. This means interrelating all the various phases of work within the organization, and we clearly provide close relationship with competent leadership and coordinating centers and activity. So these are twin sisters where once you give the direction, the controlling process will ensure its compliance, where you will underscore strictness, disciplines, and authority. So how will you do this process of controlling? It is to be done with creating awareness about the organization and its personnel, and monitoring the performance and efficiency, rewarding and punishing accordingly, and exercising strict financial discipline. So controlling means keeping the job standards, methods, procedures, functions, conservation, etc. within the strictly defined parameters of effectiveness and efficiency. Please mark the word effectiveness and efficiency. The control process should be something where you should ensure that effectiveness of the whatsoever parameters you are prescribed, whatever the quality you are assuring. So, and it also depends upon how efficiently the managerial tasks are being performed. So effectiveness and efficiency are the two key factors to be kept in mind while doing controlling. Next, please. So these are some of the universal principles of controlling. I don't want these are something known to everyone. Next, please. And the next one is leading. The most important factor in team building is to have about leader. How good are you as a leader? So you are as a manager, you should be a good leader. A leader is a person whom you be able to command, direct, and control, and able to manage failure and success with emotional stability. He is a good motivator and visualize problems and make solutions. So every one of us has got leaders in mind. So it may be Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or Nelson Mandela. Because why do you admire them as leaders? Because they could stand so tall, and they could motivate and in whichever areas they were, and they could lead the people. They could lead them towards the goal. They could command, they could direct, they could control, and they were good managers. So any person who want to build the team should first of all have to be a good leader, efficient leader, and a leader need to have these qualities in them. Next, please. So in physical education, evaluation also forms a very important part. All your administrative and instructional policies needs to be evaluated. Your health and fitness, your skill and performance, everything at the end of the day, end of the year, academic year, and end of the session need to be put into evaluation. So it refers to assessment of the work, performance of the employee, as well as organization as a whole. And it serves as a feedback mechanism, helping the managers to alter, modify, streamline policies and operations. And performance is measured by facilitating comparison. We always perform, we will always compare ourselves with certain yardsticks. There will be some performance yardsticks through which we compare and through which we can realize to which extent we have progressed. And accordingly, we may have to manage, you will have to modify, alter, change, and see that the process of entire functions, starting from planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, evaluating takes place, and then the entire process of management are being will be able to look after in a wholesome way and see that your organizations meets the targets and whatever is your policies are being well implemented. Next, please. So if you want to be an efficient leader, need to have certain skills. And what are the skills required to be an efficient manager? These can be normally there, though there are many skills. The most important of them are technical skill, human skills, and conceptual skills. Next. The skills required for management. Normally, if you look for an officer, you look for an officer-like quality. If you look for a coach, you will look for coach-like qualities. And if you look for a physical education teacher, you should have teacher-like qualities. So it is here in whichever sector you are working, you need to have those qualities in accordance to that particular sector you are working, and accordingly you have to have the leaders, and that is what is fundamentally required to. Next, please. So the technical skills, what is the technical skill? Technical skill looks into managing professional bodies, sports bodies, teaching skills in the games, officiating, organizing competitions, etc. You should be thorough with that. A technical person, a professional person should have everything in technical skill with him. Because nowadays these are all in fingertips. You can get anything, any skill, any in the world, and through your Google. You can search the Google, or everything is available in your information sector. So unless you being a technical person, your technical skill are one step above than the normal person, you will not be recognized. So you should have a far very high technical skill proficiency. Next, please. So especially in physical education, from infants pre-play to Olympic Games, everything comes under edifice of technical skill. If you want to be a teacher in primary school, you need some skills. If you want to be a skill in primary school, you need some skill. Each of them has require different types of skill. At the same time, if you want to manage high performance require a different skill. So from the edifice from children's pre-play, because you are dealing with that from prenatal, because education is from home to tomb. At every segment, every stage, you need to have the skills which are required to manage them. At whichever stage you are. So physical education teachers should have the skills to manage the people, the human resources whom they are looking into, at whichever stage they are. So the technical skill, the manager understands the mechanism of the job, runs the show in the best ability and standard, improves innovations in the management process. And technical skills are backbone for physical education profession and need to be cultivated with precision and perfection. You need to be perfect in your technical skill. You need to be precise in your technical skill. That is one very much required in the field of physical education and sports. Next, please. Next is the human skills. See, in human skills, we are dealing with human skills. What is a human being? Human being is the most fragile, thing. Even it is more fragile than a glass. If you hit hard, it will break. You can mold it also. So you need to market your product, activate your subordinates, and you need to build a good team. In team building process, what is most required is to human skills. You need to understand a person as a person. You need to know his all about him. You need to know his qualities. You need to know his strength. You need to know his weakness. You need to do a SWOT analysis on him and find out how good is that person. And you need to make them understand on what is the ethics, what is the philosophy, what is the values, what are the programs in physical education and sports. You need to make them understand. And that will help them to build a good team. Next, please. So you need to do in allowed duties, you need to develop interpersonal relationship. You need to create a congenial working environment. Every organization has got a working environment. And through human skills, you can create a good working environment. And you know that a happy employee is a productive employee. And the affection curve of how good you are in your soft skills. in managing your personnel. It is very important if you want to build the team. Next, please. And you have to, for that, you need to be very friendly. You need to get along and associates and work. You need to have collective efforts. You need to inspire confidence. You need to understand the policies. You need to be a disciplinarian at the same time humanitarian too. So you are a disciplinarian, being a discipline to make people to uh, instill discipline in them doesn't have to be done through the via media of humanity. So you need to pat and pull at times, but it should be all with the human skill to mold them, to cultivate a good sort of working environment in that person. So it should be through with good interpersonal relationship. Next, please. So the conceptual skill, we'll come to the third part, is the process of make to people work as a team. We are more concerned into, if you want to team building, you need to make the people to make as a team. A good team is always the basic of all success of every organization. For that, you need to have motivating. You need to motivate each one of them. The motivational level of each and every individual varies. You need to intrinsically motivate some person. You need to extrinsically motivate some person. So motivational skills and devices, strategies, team building strategies all need to be done. And you have to seek expert advice at times. You need to have a mentor to develop a good conceptual skills. Next, please. So the conceptual skills, you need have a good team done. It is done through expert advice. You need to do crisis management. You need to create creative strategies. So all this requires that you need to have the personality characteristics, qualities of a good leader, for which of popularity, originality, adaptability, judgment, ambition, persistence, emotional stability, social economic status, communicative skills. These are all important to be an effective, a good management leader. Next, please. So there are certain other, I'll run through these slides. These are not relevant, but I'll come to the last fact about the team building factor. Next, please. So what are the leadership skills? Where you may be performing your duties as in the leadership skill as a teacher, if you are a teacher in a school or a college, or maybe you are a director in a institution, in a private or public sector, or maybe in the government. You may be a manager. So what are the most important thing is to keep yourself updated in professional knowledge and technical skills. I have underlined it earlier also, that your professional competency, your professional knowledge and skills should be something which is above average, and it should be something which should not have no compromise, no contradiction. You should have excellent communicative skills. The communicative skills with good body language and written language. You should know the art of writing good notes, articles, messages, delivering speeches, and also nowadays to use the various platforms of social media and virtual media. So for that, the way in which you speak, the way in which your body language, the way in which you conduct, the way in which your vocabulary, the way in which you pass messages, the way in which you write research articles, the way in which you deliver speeches, all these are really important. And for this, how to develop this? This has to be developed through continuous effort. You need to have a lot of reading done. You need to have a lot of search done. You need to have a lot of research to be undertaken. And this is also to be done through good interpersonal interaction. You need to interact with the best professionals available, so that you can assimilate and acquire a lot of idea, and you can reach out to people. You need to have, nowadays the networking is very easy. You can network globe around, and during the pandemic has taught us how we can network all around the world. So manage to get more ideas, get new ideas, talk to people, talk to experts, talk to this, and develop excellent soft skills or communicative skills. And you should be aware every time there is changes happening in the field. You need to change every day. There is some modification, some good changes coming, good practices coming, good developments coming, innovations coming. So aware about the trends and practices in the field which is coming every day. Next, please. And we line that managerial task. In the manager, we can categorize them into first line, that is the supervisor. The second is the middle, and the third is the executive category. In the first line supervision, you need that most of our the students, because VP professionals from physical education and sports, you might be either managing a stadium or a field or a manager in somewhere. So here you're a first line supervisor. So what is your major thrust? Here it's supervising of individuals. And a task which is that to manage the individual. How you manage, man management. So I have told that whatever you have been discussed earlier, the technical skill, the human skill, the conceptual skill, all we have to deploy here. And you have to be instruct the subordinates and make them to see that the task is accomplished. And the next is the middle manager. Here, as to indicate middle, is there is someone in the top and someone below. So you are a link here. And here, what you have to do is to plan the resources. You need to plan how much is required because you are in the field. You know what exactly is your resource requirement. And you need to coordinate between interdependent group. You need to coordinate with the top and the bottom both, and manage the performance. And the top level is the executive that come at the cutting edge level. So here you have to do the execution, that is the management at the macro level. And here you have to make the business environment. You have to see monitor the entire business environment. And the entire business environment in the top management, you have to link the organization with the rest of the world. You have to link with you are the connection from the department. If you are the top executive, you are the one who monitor the entire environment, and you also lead from the being spearheading that department. You link with all other organizations which are revolving around you, and that is what is expected from the task of an executive. So these are what is required. I got a small video clip based on a movie. If time permits, I can do it. It may require 5 minutes. Shall I do it, or I can finish it also here? I think time is running late, so we will conclude it. I have touched upon the most important thing, but this subject is so vast, team building and sports management, it requires a lot of time to complete, and maybe that next time I'll get some more time. I will come up with some more details on this. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity, and I wish all the very best for Seshadripuram Evening Degree College and its management in its future ventures. All the very best. Thank you.